Well, good morning, folks. Welcome to another new week and to another daily devotional. We're actually taking up a new psalm this morning, Psalm number 20. And in this psalm, the people are praying for their king. The psalm is about the king going into battle with his enemies and God's people upholding him in prayer. They are praying for his success in his battle against his and his people's enemies. The battle is described in verse 1 as the day of trouble. And the people of God, as they pray for their king, and no doubt as the king prays for himself, they are praying that the God of Jacob would protect the king. Just as God had protected Jacob during his days of trouble, so they pray that God would protect the king now. The king needed God's help and God's support. And this is what the people pray for the king. The reference to the king's offerings and the king's sacrifices in verse 3 that you see there, these are highlighting the fact that the king is a man of godly obedience to the ways of the Lord and to the law of God. Clearly, the king's desire and the king's plans that are referred to are that when he goes into battle, he will overthrow his enemies and secure victory for him and for his people. If you go down to verse 5, you'll see that the people are now anticipating that their prayers are going to be answered, and they envisage their entering into the fruits of the victory that their king will secure for them. May we shout for joy over your salvation, in other words, over your deliverance. The banners of which they are speaking are banners of victory. The confidence they have is that God would answer their prayer on behalf of their king. Look at verse 6. Now I know that the Lord saves his anointed. He will answer him from his holy hill with the saving might of his right hand. The battle hasn't even taken place yet, but the people of God are confident that their king will gain victory. In verse 7, the people speak about those who trust in chariots and horses, that is, their enemies. But although their enemies might have lots more chariots and horses and appear to be stronger and better equipped than them, nevertheless, they are trusting in the name of the Lord. Thus, their enemies' trust in their military and numerical might will prove to be futile in the end. God is on the side of his anointed, and so they declare, we trust in the name of our Lord. And we know from the historical books of the Old Testament that time and time again, God did give David, the king, victory over his enemies, over enemies that were numerically and militarily much stronger than David. But as Paul reminds us in the New Testament, if God is for us, who can be against us? In reading this psalm, we are not to think solely of David and the people of God in the Old Testament. This psalm points forward also to another king, the king, King Jesus. He is the ultimate king of the people of God. And when he came to this earth, he entered into a battle with his enemies. And it seemed as though those enemies were much stronger than him, and that everything was against him. And at one point, It even seemed as though his enemies were going to get victory over him. They crucified him, and it seemed as though the enemies had triumphed. But no, our King ultimately triumphed over his enemies. He defeated them, the greatest enemy of all, Satan and death, by the power of his mighty resurrection. And in that victory, we, his people, not only rejoice, but we enter into the fruits of that victory, the spoils of war, if you like. We too can know and will know what it is to get victory over our enemy and over death. And just as God gave David strength to overcome his enemies when he was doing battle with them, so too he gave Jesus strength to overcome his enemies when he was doing battle with them. And God will also give us strength and help us and give us victory in our battles against temptation, against sin, as we look to and as we, like the people in this psalm, are able to say, we trust in the name of the Lord. May you know such victories in your battles, and may you rejoice in the great victory that Jesus has given us. Every blessing.